Hello and welcome to Real Estate Divas. Today we have the amazing Nancy Wallace-Laabs with us, who is uber talented, and she is going to be sharing all of her wisdom on property management, STRs, owner finance, and where she feels this real estate market is going right after this. So Nancy, welcome. I am here with Nancy Wallace-Laabs, and she is the best-selling author of not only one, but two books, Winning Deals in Heels, and also Let Me Ask You This. Yes.
Let me ask you this. That's
I haven't read this one. I've read your Winning Deals.
I didn't even realize you had your second book.
I do, yeah.
That is so awesome.
It's about all the questions you should be asking if you're a real estate investor.
If you're a real estate investor. Now, is this to partner with somebody, or is this just to get started?
It mainly focuses on lenders. You know, when you're a real estate investor, you can't just go to, XYZ bank and get a loan. So there's a particular set of questions you should be asking each lender so that, A, you're not wasting your time, and two, they're actually going to be able to do the loan. So I felt it was really important. And one of the things I'm known for in my family is I always question things like, well, let me ask you this. And that's what I do with let me ask you this. If you can't do it this way, can you? So I'm always looking for the answers, especially if I hear no. So.
Yeah. And both of these books are available on Amazon if you want to go check them out. And you've been doing real estate for how long?
Well over, oh my gosh, it's almost close to 20 years now. I did start when I was 3, but
20 years is a good number.
Yeah,
I
was a little older when I started. If I only knew what I knew,
exactly,
now, but it's been a journey, and I've really enjoyed it. And I do want to say thank you guys for having me on your show. I love watching the Real Estate Divas, and you always have such good info on how to be the best real estate investor you can be.
Well, we're glad we're glad we invited you and you came. You were able to make the time. Your first book, the Winning Deals in Heels, I remember when that one came out, and go ahead and tell everybody what that one's kind of about.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of highlight women in real estate investing, because I do think that women, you can go to a lot of conferences out there, and there's always men on the stage, much more proportionally than there are women. And typically the women that are on the stage, not to disparage anyone, but they're usually attorneys or they're marketing people, and they're not, talking about real estate things like investing.
Yeah.
And so the first time when I thought the idea, I've always wanted to write a book, and I thought, you know what, I want to write a book that's about normal women. We all have kids or another life, and how can we fit real estate investing into what we want to do? Because I was looking for financial freedom. I was saying, here's my journey. And one of the things, all of the women in the book, so it highlights 10 women in the book that are very successful.
I'm one of them.
And Kristin, and when I came up with the idea, I actually called her first. I was like, hey, I got this idea. Would you be my first person that I interviewed? So
that's awesome.
It was super
and
fun.
I didn't know Jer'Leigh at the time, or else I definitely would have had her in there.
No offense taken. I'll be as long as I'm in the
volume
next
2.
one. Yeah.
So I really wanted to highlight that the similarities that we all had in our journey. I mean, we all came from different backgrounds, but there were a couple of similarities. Number one, we said, we made it a priority. We got support from our family and friends. We all either hired or had a mentor in our lives, because, when you start down this journey, there's so many ways you can go wrong. And so it's good to have a trusted mentor that can kind of show you the ropes. I mean, I started out with buy and holds. I didn't know anything about notes, and Kristin was, I've learned so much about notes from Kristin. So I think it's important to have people that have been successful. So I just wanted to showcase, hey, there are a lot of women out here, and this is just a tiny portion of the successful women real estate investors.
So just a quick interjection, though. Those mentors, you know, as a woman, sometimes are not exactly the helpful mentor that you're expecting.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I also think, you know, say what you will, you know, women think differently. We think about, I had a friend that she called me up and she was having, because a lot of times it's the contractors, like let's say you're doing a flip or even purchasing property, and a lot of the contractors are male. And, you know, if you haven't learned,
Like most
of them.
Yeah.
So she called me up, and I'm old school. I mean, I was raised like, okay, you don't cry no matter what, you know, in a business setting. So she was in tears with the contractor, and of course he was obviously taking advantage of her. And I said, okay, first of all, you got to get you know, turn off the faucet, and then you have to start documenting it. So I think unless you've had management positions, I mean, if you have raised a family, you've never worked, but you have great organizational skills, you have great communication skills, you can be a successful real estate investor. You just need a mentor that can say, hey, you have these skills, and how can you apply them to real estate investing? And I think that's the part that when you hire a guru, they don't really delve into, you know, they just want to give you, okay, read this, read this, read this, but they don't really say, hey, these are your skills, and this is how you can benefit and optimize your skills to be a great real estate investor. And I think that's what's missing.
you know, it's not always hiring somebody either.
No.
Yeah.
I met an older, very experienced, you know, real estate investor who just took me under his wing, and he goes, you're out there, you're already doing it, which I had been. I mean, at that point I was working on 8 different rehabs. So he already knew that I was out there seriously doing it. And he goes, let me take you to lunch. Let's talk about what you're doing. Let me help you kind of learn something new to have another skill.
I totally agree with that. So I try to do YouTube videos. I love to do, you know, public speaking and presentations. And my passion is really to help people minimize financial risks as much as you can. Because, I mean, real estate can be risky.
Absolutely.
But you have to understand what financial risks there are, how to identify them, and how to minimize them so that you can make money, because that's really why we all got into it, right?
That's the goal.
So I think it's, and my first mentor, I did not pay for the person. I mean, she took me under her wing, and I learned so much. You know, subsequently, I have paid other people, and so what I've learned from that is that, you know, you get in what you put out, right? So if somebody's paying for, you know, mentorship, just make sure you have the time and commitment to follow through, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere, right? I mean, it is work. It's, you know, it's trial and error sometimes.
Treat it like a job.
Yes.
And with that job comes homework, and you have to be diligent, because if you hire somebody and you think they're just going to poof, make it happen, that's not how this works.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I take on students, I have to make sure that they have time. I've also learned that you can't stretch it out over a year, because people's, you know, their thought process doesn't follow that. And that they have to have success pretty early on in the game. But there also has to be a level of commitment, and sometimes that means dollars in terms of, you know, you have to pay for marketing. You have to, you know, drive for dollars, or whatever the strategy is going to be to find deals.
So you're also looking for ones that have some type of finances to get started.
Yes.
To be able to commit to the,
well, I mean, right now we have so many people out there, and not that you can't get it done, get success with $0, but there's so many people out there like preaching that from the hilltops that everybody thinks, oh, I can get into real estate and not spend any money and make buku bucks and all of this.
And to be fair, you can do that.
You can,
but it takes a lot more effort, a lot more work,
effort,
a lot more time.
And I'm going to say, I have heard people talk about, oh, no money down, and it took me almost 18 years. And I did do a deal where I had zero money in it. I made over $40,000, and it was great. But it took a strategy that I learned it kind of by trial and error of doing other things, and no one knows this strategy. So it has to do with using options, with your self-directed IRA.
Yep.
And so I have done those deals now, and it's great. But again, it's not like I picked up a book and read that. So,
Yep.
But even then, you had access to other people's money, or even some of your own money in an IRA. So you still had to have
and I took
some money.
Took a lot of time building private money networks. So yes, you have to put the time in and the work, like you were saying.
Right.
Well, and I think it's a good thing to make sure that everybody's aware of is really picking your mentor is do your due diligence. You know,
and you also have to click.
You have to click. Do your due diligence. You don't have to pay for. There's plenty of people out there just trying to help the next person up, but there's also, like we mentioned right before the show, there's a lot of people out there that take advantage. You know,
Yes.
take advantage. It's not professional. Their interest is not professional. And you just need to be aware of that space that you're walking into, that could
Their
be a possibility.
end goal should match your end goal.
Yeah.
You know, that's exactly what if you're paying for a mentor, that's what you really need to make sure of. So,
Absolutely.
Well, and I do wish that we could get more women involved in real estate investing, you know, especially the ones who are thinking about it. And I get letters, emails, texts, calls from women all the time going, how do I get started in this? You know, and I really just want to say, go buy something.
you know, I have a little thought on that. So out of all the people I've talked to and everything, what I've found is that women, you know, we're very caring, and, you know, I'm generalizing here, but, you know, we take care of our family first.
I'm cold. I'm cold.
But what I
care
have
about
found is if
anybody.
women don't feel supported in their friends and family, especially if they have a spouse, they will not pull the trigger because
Yeah.
they want that support. They have to have a safety net. They have to be able to, whether it's a group that they can, you know, belong to, whether it's a, you know, similar group of women, if they don't feel that they have that safety net, they want to, but no one is supporting them, you know, within their close niche, they're not going to move forward. I
And
haven't
you
met.
know what? And I had the support from my husband to get started.
Same.
He was the
Yep.
one who got me started in real estate investing. He was leaving real estate investing books around because he knew I was going crazy staying home with an infant, you know, and he said, this is something I'm always interested in.
Yep.
You know, and then I figured out what he was doing after I read like 4 or 5 books, you know, and I'm like, I can do this. So you're right. I think you know, knowing that you have somebody out there backing you up, especially friends and family.
Yes.
Well, and in addition, especially if you have a family already, you're using your family's money, energy, and time. And as a woman, typically, to generalize, we are the glue that kind of keeps it together. You know, we're doing work, but we're also doing a lot of the home stuff. You know, I mean, it's just
the way.
and to take that away from your family, you've got to feel like you're being supported.
Right, because we'll always put other people before us, even though it might
Typically.
help the family. But yeah, I think you have to have support, and so I think that's one of the things. The book was to say to other women, hey, you know what? There's 10 of us in this book, and we all started out the same way. I mean, you could draw a line about we all had families or commitments. You know, we had to make the time. We got a trusted mentor. And we just kept working it. And that's really the theme of the book.
That is the theme. Just keep
And
working
I just
it.
want to say one more thing about winning deals and heels, because I was so passionate about it that I really said, you know, if you're going to write a book, you're not going to make money, right? That's not why I wrote the book. I wrote the book for just getting the word out there about, you know, successful real estate women investors. But I also wanted to have a purpose, you know, saying, you know, putting my money where my mouth is, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked around for a nonprofit. So part of the proceeds from each sale of Winning Deals and Heels benefits Hope Store here in Plano, Texas. It's a nonprofit organization that helps families heal from violence, domestic violence. And I felt, you know, that just really spoke to me that, you know, if you don't have a safe place to go to, you can't feed your family, you know, you're not going to be a real estate investor right now because you just can't.
Yeah,
right?
you've
It's
got bigger
the
problems.
stress and
Yeah.
getting
Yes.
started. And
So
You're just trying
that's
to
my little
survive.
plug. So go out
Yeah.
and buy a book.
Yeah, exactly. It's helping. It's helping.
good. Well, and so you got your main start, I believe, in property management.
Yes. So I owned a property management company for over 10 years. I started out in real estate investing just kind of as a fluke. I was a blood bank management consultant, and I traveled all over the United States, Canada, and Europe, helping blood banks get donors into the door. So I do know how to make phone calls, right? And that's just a whole nother story, another diva show.
Yeah.
Anyway, we lived in Phoenix, and the housing market was just insane. People, you know, kind of like what has happened here in Dallas. And my husband and I, we started looking around in our neighborhood. We had lived in our home 8 years, and we just said, we quit our jobs, put our house on the market, sold it, took the money and moved to Texas. That's what we did. That was my journey into real estate. I didn't know anything about real estate. I just knew, man, you can make a lot of money.
You can make money in real estate.
Yeah. So when I got here, I was like, okay, now I really want to become a real estate investor. And so,
how many years ago was this?
Oh my gosh, it was like 18 years ago.
18 years ago that you moved to Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
17, 18, somewhere around there. So then I was like, oh, okay, now I really want to buy property and I wanted to be a landlord. So I went to the real estate agent that we had used. I said, hey, can you sell me a rental? I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing. And she goes, I got the great person. So she actually introduced me to the person that ended up being my mentor. She hands me, which I still use this book and recommend it to this day for new landlords. It's called it's by Gary Keller, The Real Estate Millionaire. I think is what, it's one rental at a time kind of thing. And she said, you read this, come back to me and I'll go help you. So I read it in like a day and a half, was back in her office, bought my first property within a couple weeks after that. And then I didn't know, the first thing that happened was, okay, I don't know who to rent to. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I talked her into giving me a job. She didn't want to hire me because I had no real estate experience.
Yeah.
Anyway, went in there, I said, hire me for a month. You don't have to pay me. She paid me peanuts. So after a month is kind of history. We ended up becoming partners and we grew our property management company just by referrals, right? So I did that for 10 years and I became one of the real estate brokers in Texas that got licensed by TREC to teach other property managers how to be a property. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I had been managing my own properties and I never did want to give them up because every time I went to go interview another property manager, I was like, you should have known that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's only been in the last maybe 3 or 4 years before the pandemic, I finally did hire a property management company. And I don't do property management anymore because now I moved into short-term rentals. But yes, I did property management. There's probably not a question I don't know or had the scenario that I've had people die, I've had to evict. I've had great tenants.
And you've also you have a system, like an online.
Yes. So I teach people, and in October, I'm going to be doing kind of a powwow workshop for landlords, which has to do with, I think that, things are changing right now.
Things are changing.
And I think you got to start diversifying. Now that we're over the eviction moratorium, I think people are going to turn back to, buy and holds. It's, maybe not the best time right this second to buy properties, but that is going to come back in. People are going to need housing with the interest rates going up. People aren't going to be able to buy. So yes, I teach people property management. I have online courses about how to be your own property manager, but also you need to learn how to hire a property manager because not all property managers are created equal.
Exactly.
So let's take a quick break and we are going to be right back and we'll delve into, your property management tips.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, welcome back, Nancy. Giving so much knowledge on your property manager experience. What would you say is the number one mistake when an investor goes to rent out their property? Other than, of course, not hiring a professional property manager.
Yeah, they're going to do it themselves. And I do recommend people do it. But I'd say the number one mistake, hands down, is getting the wrong tenant. Getting the wrong applicant. People get, they've just purchased this property, they've done whatever repairs, they've painted, they've carpeted, and now they have a mortgage payment, because usually 30, 60 days have gone by, and they just want to get somebody in there. They just got to get somebody in there, and they do not take the time to do the due diligence, to ask the questions, do the proper background screening.
Is it because they're desperate?
Desperate, and they don't know what they're doing.
I was going to say,
and
they don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. And the reason that's the number one mistake, there's others that you could make, but if you get a bad tenant in there, we're in Texas, so we have fairly easy eviction laws, but it still takes a good 30, 45 days. But if you're in New York or California, you're talking years and tens of thousands of dollars. You have to, so you really have to just stop and do your due diligence. And you can't just rely on what it says on a piece of paper. The other thing that I see,
and just back on that last question, how do you What is the best tip for making sure you have the right client? Is there a special background check company you use?
There's so many resources
There
now.
are so many resources.
It used to be, I feel like, a lot more, you had to do a lot more legwork. You had to do a ton more legwork.
Yeah, but there's,
But
now,
now-
you can, so I like National Tenant Network. And the reason, and there are some great ones. That's just the one that I've used. Their reports are super simple to read. It's fairly inexpensive to run a background check, which of course the applicant pays for. But the first thing that they need to do is have a completed application, because I'll get calls and I was like, well, how come they didn't fill out, how much their income is or whatever. So the first thing is you get a completed application. All the blanks are filled in, and you run a background check on anybody 18 and older. Now, somebody
In the house.
that's going to live in the property. Now, if they're in high school and they're 18, they're going to graduate, I probably won't run a background check on them, but I do have the option because it says in my policies 18 and older. So I run a background check on all the people that are going to be on the lease, financially responsible. And then when the credit report, so the reason I like them, National Network, is because they include a credit report, they include a Social Security trace, they include rental history, and they include the criminal, so background and everything. So you get it all in one piece of paper. And what I really like about the reports is when you get the first page, they have it color coded. So green is like a go, like you don't even have to read it.
Take care.
Yellow is like
sign this one
maybe
up.
you need to have a better security deposit, and red is like boom. So right there, and I mean, yes, you have to go through and read it and everything. And then the second thing I see people doing is they try to use a credit score. Now, credit score doesn't mean anything in rental history. I have some of my best tenants have a credit score of 480 because as a property manager, I don't like churn. As a landlord, I don't like churn. So I want a good tenant that's going to be with me for a while. Now, prior to the pandemic, I used to just routinely do 2-year leases, and I may go back to that, but now with the pandemic, I'm a little, I'm not so eager to just do a 2-year lease, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be like, oh, okay, you can't
So
pay your
you've
rent.
gone less or you've
Yes,
gone
I
more?
did. During the pandemic, I had a rental come available, and I was super picky about who I got. And then I just did a 6-month lease because during the eviction moratorium, even if you had somebody that you couldn't evict anybody,
Yep.
but you could get them out if they overstayed the lease, meaning, the lease had terminated and they didn't move out, once they were giving. So
That's a great tip.
Yeah,
Yep.
you could evict for those reasons, but for non-payment, could not.
Okay, but I want to stop you real quick because whenever you were talking about it's really important that a lot of people hear the reason why you don't care that much about a low credit score.
Okay.
Because that's a good tip for everybody to listen to.
All right, so
and
the reason I don't care about the good credit, my two biggest things are ability to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So, income, do they have enough? And I go by 3 times the amount of rent. So if if the rent is $1,500, they've got to have a gross income of $4,500. And then the credit score, because first of all, because I don't want churn, I'm looking for somebody that's really not going to be able to buy a house anytime soon, right?
Exactly.
And I have had some of the worst tenants, not necessarily non-paying, just very high maintenance, that had 800 square, because they have a certain expectation. They don't plan on being in a rental property that long. So they probably are best just to go buy a house or rent a very high-end property. So our rental portfolio consisted of 1,500 was about the max and up to about 3,500. So this was, several years ago. I've had friends that rent out, they're $5,000 a month and they don't pay. And then they'll call me, the person was actually 3 months behind. So they owed $15,000.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was like, you can go to eviction court all day long. You just need to and they wanted to know how to get that money. I was like, you know what? You just need to get them out because you're never going to get that money.
Yeah,
right?
file that eviction. Now
So
it's
the
too
credit
much.
score. Now, let me just kind of put a little more information about the credit score. What I look for is why they have a low credit score.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody had, and this can happen to anybody, if somebody has a bunch of collections that happen to be medical debt, I don't even count those because that can happen. I mean, if you've been to the doctor, you can get billed 6 months later, or it's $3,000 or something.
You don't
like
have
that.
insurance. Da 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 da.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I look for is if their credit score is due to a judgment or a collection, especially from a landlord, that's an automatic no. So they could still have that 500 credit score and they were evicted or have a judgment from a landlord. Now, if they have a judgment from a landlord, what I try to do is like, if you pay that landlord their money that you owe them, I'll consider you, but you'll have to pay 2.5 times the security deposit. So I look at the reasons. If they haven't paid, if their car got possessed, yeah, I don't rent to them, because if you don't have a car, how are you going to get to work? And if you can't get to work, how are you going to pay me my rent?
Exactly.
So, and then
is this also because, you know, when I'm owner financing to somebody, I always look at it and I see who their creditors are. And I always tell investors, I don't care if Sears, if Rent-A-Center,
exactly,
all of these stores hate them. What I care about is what their past rental history was.
Yes.
And if their past landlord loved them for the last 5 years, then obviously, and I would also say that somebody who doesn't move every year would be somebody who is super important.
My first tenant that, you know, I had the choice between, and I'm a broker, so I can say this, was a real estate agent and a guy that was a janitor at a school. And I said to my mentor, I was like, well, who do I rent to? Because, you know, they kind of had the same family size and credit score and all that. And she goes, rent to the janitor, because the real estate agent's going to be based on commission and all this. And she, even before she got the property, she wanted to know, could she paint and bring her 3 dogs and blah, blah, blah. He ended up staying, when that was my first property, and I ended up selling that property when I think he was in there 11 years. He paid my mortgage, I can't even tell you how many times over. And when it got to the point where, because he had gone in so low, because rents were so low at the time, I wouldn't be able to raise his rent. He couldn't afford it to where I needed to go. And when I got him out, because the property taxes now have gone up, and it just doesn't make sense to keep this as a rental. The amount of work, you know, once he left, I mean, it was almost a complete rehab, you know what I mean? New floors and all that to get the rent that I really wanted. So we made the decision that we said, okay, well, we're just going to sell this property as is to an investor. We did. And we made out good because we'd held it for 11 years. So
exactly.
So you sold it with him in place?
No, I told him, I contacted him and said, hey, this is what's happening. I need to raise the rent to this. There was no way he could do it. And I mean, I saw his kids grow up. Now, I'm not like friendly with my tenants that way, but you know, he would tell me, you know, a few times over the years he was late, but his kids grew up in this is a family that grew up. So his family had moved on. I mean, his daughters had graduated from high school. One of them had gotten married. So that's kind of the good part about being a landlord. So, but when I went in there and saw,
and also you had that tenant there for 11 years.
Yes,
that's low maintenance.
All that.
He probably hardly asked for a thing.
I hardly ever.
I had one of those. Section 8 tenant. She stayed there, raised her boys. I actually sold the property with her still living there. I still get a Christmas card from her every year.
So I mean, it's kind of cool, the stories that you can, you know, that you do get to know your tenants. I mean, I'm a very hands-off property manager. I'm not over there, you know.
Yeah, but when they lived with you 12 years.
And you know about them. So yes.
So credit score is important, like ding, ding, ding.
Rental history.
Rental history.
And then just on, you know, prior landlords. So I just want to say this, because people, you know, on the application, and this happens, and everything I'm saying has happened in my career as a property manager. So I always say verify who the actual landlord is, because people will put down their aunt, their cousin, or whatever. It's a very easy way to do. If it's an apartment complex, there's going to be a property manager, so you don't have to do this. But if they've rented a single family home, then you're going to want to know that the landlord that you're getting the rental reference from, which I don't really hold a lot of stock, and I'm going to tell you why. But I'll go to the tax records and see if that is the actual person that owns it. If it is somebody different, that's a no, because on our application it says if you falsify anything, it's automatic grounds for not renting to you. Now, fast forward. Let's say that you want to find out about, you know, Kristin's going to come and rent from me, right? So I'm going to call up Kristin. I've verified that, yes, this is Jer'Leigh's her landlord. I'm going to call up Jer'Leigh. Now, what I don't know as the property manager or as the landlord, property owner, Kristin is a horrible tenant. She doesn't pay her rent on time. Her boyfriend's always just having parties and everything. But Jer'Leigh, the landlord, wants her gone. So,
well, and I'm not legally allowed to say anything other than.
So even though I call it, Jer'Leigh's going to give her a glowing, you know, oh yeah, she pays her rent. She is not going to give me the scoop, because she knows if she gives me the scoop, I'm not going to rent to them. So I rarely call a landlord. There are other ways. That's why I like.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that.
Yeah,
The
because
previous landlord would be lying.
Yes, you would just say, you know what, and maybe you paid the rent on time, or maybe they just won't tell you, right? They just won't tell you. So that's why I like the National Tenant Network. To verify rental history, what I do is I'll get their Social Security. It's a Social Security trace report, and it shows every place that they've used their Social Security and every place they've lived. And then if I still can't get there, I'll ask them for, so these are the things that we collect on anybody. So I have to have a picture ID, and it usually has an address on it. I have them submit pay stubs from their job, usually has an address on it. And then on the application it says, where are you currently living? And all of those things have to add up. So there's ways to find out, but if you're new, you don't know that.
Yep.
You just go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, in our few minutes, because I know there's a huge focus on how everything is evolving right now.
Yes.
And I mean, yeah, you're hearing from one realtor, oh, I'm not getting any traffic or anything. And I'm sure, Jer'Leigh, she's got tons of agents under her. So
yeah, our agents, I've got agents calling me on a daily basis, what's going on in the market. Have you noticed that it's softening? What are we going to do? What should I do? How should I pivot? And I'm like, just take a breath.
Yes.
Right now, there's a little bit of softening going on, but it'll be the same thing as back in 2008. Whatever is going on, we're going to see first on either coast, and then it'll travel to Texas. We've got that buffer. That's the great thing about doing real estate in Texas is the buffer. But yeah, things are shifting. You do need to start thinking about what your next strategy is should things shift a little harder.
And I know you've been doing owner finance for years, which in any indication, if people cannot qualify for mortgages, the first thing that happens is that owner financing goes straight.
Up.
And so you focus.
And private money lending.
And private money lending.
And private money lending, because people can't just go now to get the loans at the banks and things like that. So I think it's time for, don't panic, right?
Don't panic.
Don't panic. Just kind of take a step back. And this is kind of how successful real estate investors evolve. They look at what is going on, just like you said, East Coast to West Coast. There are still deals to be had, no matter what. You've just got to, never stop marketing, never stop branding yourself, but then start, just diversification. So I know we've talked about short-term rentals. I've been focused on that. I've been presenting about that, but now I'm starting to see somewhat of a shift. And so I'm shifting my business model to kind of offset what's happening in the short-term rental market, and I do see a shift towards owner financing. With people being very nervous about investing their money in the stock market. So there's opportunity to become private money lenders. And then owner financing, because I totally agree. People are going to,
which is just, it's originating notes. Mm-hmm. And, I'm going to start really upping my speaking and getting out there going, hey, structure these things the right way. And you can continually regenerate all of that private lender.
Yep.
Financing that you have.
So there's just so many. That's what I love about real estate investing. We could do days and days and days of just talking about different strategies. So what I talk to people about is, you can't just have one strategy. When you're first starting, you do need to learn, learn everything you can about fix and flips, if that's what you're into, or wholesaling, and then move on to the next one. Don't try to do all of it at one time, because you'll get overwhelmed, frustrated, run out of money.
None of it'll work.
And then you'll just go, oh, well, see, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you said the short-term rental market is evolving. What are you seeing there?
So I'm seeing, this is what I'm seeing, and this is from my own, and then, other people I know, and, Facebook posts, but there's a slowdown. And I think a couple things. It's August, school just went back in. When gas prices went up to, $4, $5, $8, I think people are going to be looking for short-term rentals more closer to home. They're not going to be flying off to, exotic destinations, because they're going to save money. And I think that they're not booking way ahead. I'm actually seeing people booking same day, a few days ahead, maybe a couple weeks. I have a couple bookings, just around the holidays, but that's what I'm seeing, is that people really are kind of nervous about
so they're watching it like a
they're
day
watching
to day,
it
rather
exactly.
than we're planning this way.
Yes.
You know,
way in advance.
AirDNA threw out an article saying that overall bookings are down 40% from where they are. You know, I'm fortunate that I'm above that, and everything is pretty nice and full. But I do think that there is a saturation factor.
Yes, I'll agree with that. And I also think that because of the saturation level, you have people that are just, I want to have a vacation home, or I want to, you know, they see it as exciting because, I get to have this house and I get to decorate it so pretty. But what they don't realize is it's work too, you know?
Yep.
And you have to do things, if you're going to stay booked and keep booked and get more money and make money in this business, then you have to get creative about your pricing strategies. I haven't found one guru that teaches about actual pricing strategies. Maybe I'm wrong.
I do in my presentation.
Well, yes, you do, but I'm saying like, somebody you're going to pay or something, right?
somebody you're going to pay.
Yeah,
right.
I'm saying like, I do that too. I do that too.
I give away all my education for free.
And then also booking,
for the cost of,
like
$20.
what happens, like I was talking to another co-host or another host, and she was, really struggling with getting bookings, and she's lakefront, a beautiful property. So I said, well, send me a link, let me look at it. Well, number one, her pictures were so dark. She and her husband.
Well, just like anything. I'm sorry, listings. You
But
need good pictures. Everybody's online.
I didn't want to really hurt her feelings about it, right? So what I said is,
So it wasn't. It was like when we had wine.
No, yeah, it's not like when you hammered me. So I did take her, and it's like, So, but then I went in. So on Airbnb platform, there's some KPIs in there that you really need to be familiar with, and one of them has to do with your occupancy rate and the number of views. Mm-hmm. So she had gotten in the last month 800 views and 0 bookings. So people were looking at her property, but what was it that was not? And I told her, I said, you need professional pictures because you have plenty of people that are looking. Now, on an average, a booking occupancy rate only needs to be 1% to 3% to make money. And that's kind of an average. So even if she had gotten 1% of that 800, that would give her 8 bookings. That's a good month.
Yeah.
So I said, you have a beautiful property. Well, I could tell it was beautiful that she had decorated it, but it was so brown and so dark. It's like, you need to get some pops of color in there. You need to have, and so her husband did not. So this is an example of when the woman probably knows better. So her husband did not want to spend the money on professional photographs, and I said, well, you just have to tell him how much money you're losing because you didn't.
It's a no-brainer.
For the cost of
It's an
$150 or
no-brainer.
$200, you can have professional photographs.
And I think the other thing that people they get very personal. They forget that this is a business, and
just like any house
exactly.
you live in,
and you have just spent all this money, and you put your personal decor or the way you like, and then you're offended because nobody's booking it. Well, you have to do it for the masses. You have to make it kid friendly, or I love pet friendly, and
you and I talked about this just before the show. I'm seeing all of these investors that are coming to me talking about managing their properties. And when I look at what some of these designers, and they're paying a lot of money to have a designer go in, and it's great. That professional interior designer designs so that when somebody comes to your house, it's beautiful. But that might not look very good in photos for an Airbnb. And the same with a professional stager. Because a professional stager that stages for, people coming to buy a house, that's going to showcase the house and make the spaces make sense.
Right.
Whereas Airbnb, you have to be able to have somebody want to book it off a photograph.
And they have
it's a
really and
completely different
truly,
look.
I get what you're saying, but really and truly, if they're a good designer and they're a good stager, they should know the job that they're at.
I completely agree with you.
But there's too many people
I have seen enough.
that just think
there's too many
they got all their
people out
ideas
there
off of Pinterest, right?
The amount, and I don't know why they hear Airbnb, and I'm not kidding you, it's 100% of professional designers. They hear, I'm going to design an Airbnb for Dallas, and why do we have longhorn cattle everywhere?
Yeah.
I'm like, can you show me a Longhorn cattle in
I
Dallas?
can.
You know, and I'm
At the
Is
gas
that the gas
station, the taco shop gas station.
That's
Yeah.
for photos. That's a pet.
you know,
Well,
we have
I feel like we could do an entire, and we should do an entire show on just short-term rentals.
yes, because there's just
because
more to just throwing it
there's
up
a
on
ton-
Airbnb.
Yeah,
and then
there's
going,
a
oh, I hope
ton
I
we
made
can
funny.
talk about. But we're just gonna have to have you back.
Oh, I would love that. You guys are
Yeah.
always so fun and everything.
Yeah,
so.
we're going to have you back. And I think everybody else will agree that we need to have you back so that they can ask questions about the short-term rentals and we can all share
And other
our
property
expe-
management.
and property
and
management, because I think that's where
Yeah.
you're going to have to kind of look
And then
at.
owner finance.
And
Yep.
owner finance. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to be a regular guest, Nancy.
Okay, love it. To get my diva outfit on. So, well,
It'll be
thanks so
awesome.
much, you guys. It's always just a pleasure to sit and talk real estate with you, lovely ladies. So
if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So they can go to my website, NancyWallace-Laabs.com. That's LAABS.com. Or just send me an email at nancy@kbnhomes.com. Or check out my YouTube channel. I have a lot of stuff on being a landlord, short-term rental, how to stock an owner closet, some things that you wouldn't really think about. And do subscribe and give me a like.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
You bet. Thanks for coming.
And I am Kristin Gerst. I'm with Capricorn Mortgage Investments. Send me your owner finance mortgage notes. I'd love to buy them.
And I am Jer'Leigh Thompson with Texel Real Estate and Real Estate Reformation. If you're an agent looking for a new home or a new broker, give me a shout. And also any properties in Arlington, looking for short-term rental and long-term rental. So yeah, give me a shout. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon.